you guys? How are y'all doing today? It's Cameron here, and we are so happy to bring this Wednesday night service to you. We love you guys so much. We miss you all so much. We have an awesome night planned for you, and so now we're gonna hop on over into worship.
What's going on, Real Life? You guys go ahead and sing along with me, clap along, do what you gotta do. Let's get this thing started. Come on. Sing this out, I close my eyes and colors fly. There's no hiding from your grace. I can't deny your heart from mine, and it's unrelenting chase. I was on the edge of deception, caught up in my own hesitation, until your love took over me. Oh, so I let go and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, here awaits us, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. When I let go, then I find life. Oh, when I let go, then I find life. The higher way is calling me to a life unlike before. The Father's heart is beckoning, and I can't resist no more. Lead me in the ways of devotion. I don't wanna get caught in the motions. My heart is only for you, Lord. Oh, so I let go and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, it awaits us, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. When I let go, then I find life. When I let go, then I find life. So I let go and I let love show me life like it's supposed to be. An oasis, here awaits us, all the freedom I'll ever need. Now I'm alive. When I let go, then I find life. When I let go, then I find life.
What's up, Pastor Adam?
What's up, Pastor Dakota?
How you doing, brother?
Doing good. Doing good.
How's your day going so far?
Well, I practically just woke up. This is the earliest one we've ever recorded, I believe. So let's see how it goes.
Hey,
I've got my Monster energy drink, just in
I
case
hear-
need a boost.
Yeah, I've got my my fuel here as well. Good, man. It's good to be on here. I'm excited for today for sure.
Yeah, me too. Super excited. Super excited. I am sad, however, about the announcement of camp being canceled. In case
Oh
you
my
guys didn't know that.
Yeah,
camp
it's
is
so
no longer a thing. So,
so
but
terrible.
we are planning some fun things during the summer. So definitely be on the lookout for those. It's going to be a good summer.
That's right. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna make the best of it, no matter what, for sure.
Yes, 100%.
Cool.
Well, guys, before we get started and into our topic today, there's been some pretty crazy stuff happening over the weekend and even the last week. And so I just kind of wanted to speak to that before we even get started on our topic for today. And, it's really sad kind of what's happening in our nation. Not kind of, it is sad. I don't have a lot of words to say, like probably the right words to say. I grew up always with like a lot of Black friends, and I always heard this phrase from my white friends that was, I don't see color, but I think that's probably a lot of what the problem is that for so long we've ignored color, like ignored the color thing, that now it's like spilled over. And I don't think it's ever supposed to have been that way. I think we've always supposed to see color, because if you look at God and how he created us all differently. He created us with all different races, all different colors, all different ethnicities, all different pigmentations of those colors and ethnicities. And the same God that created that also created the rainbow. And if you look at the rainbow, it's many different colors. It's not just one. If you look at like the world when you go out in it, the sky's blue, the trees are green. There's all different beautiful birds that he created that are red, yellow, black and white. You know what I mean? And I think that's been a lot of the problem, is that when we say we don't see color, like really we're ignoring the beauty of what God created. And so, actually we're recording this on Tuesday, which is the day to pause on social media. We've been seeing that. And I think it's really time to pause and reflect, not only the injustice that we've seen over the years for the Black lives, but also to see the beauty in who they are, because God's created us all unique, beautiful, talented. And for me to sit back, I love people so much. And Pastor Dakota, I know you do too. And for me to sit back and like see that people are hurting and they don't feel like they measure up to someone else, or they feel marginalized, I've sat in my bedroom and like cried about it, because I just don't understand, and I want to understand. And so, and I want to make a difference. And I'm kind of getting a little emotional right now thinking about it. I want to make a difference, and I don't know how. And so the best way that I feel like that we can do that and to stand up for the people that we love and to show people their beauty is to just simply pray. And so I want to do that, before we get started today. So God, I just pray for our nation. I pray that you would bring us together, that you would unify us, that God, any attack that the enemy has for us right now, I pray that we would squash those attacks, Lord, and that we would come out of this even more unified than we ever have before. I pray for the injustice that has been going on for hundreds of years. And Lord, I just pray right now that would end, Lord, that we would truly come together in this moment and not just put out some false thing like I don't see color, or that all lives matter, Lord, but that we would truly see that if our brother is hurting, that if our brothers and sisters of color are hurting, God, that all lives can't matter until Black lives matter, God, that we would see that the beauty of their life, that we would see that Lord, that we would champion them, that we would stand with them, God, that we would see their hurt and we would see their pain, God, and that you would come in and that you would bring joy and that you would bring justice, because that's who you are. You're a God of justice. You're a God of joy. You're a God of reconciliation. And so, God, I just pray for that right now in our nation, Lord, that there would be reconciliation, that there would be justice, and that, Lord, where there was mourning, that you would bring joy right now. And that, Lord, we would come out of this thing unified. Lord, heal our land, Lord. I'm praying right now for me, Lord, Like it says in your word that if we humble ourselves, if we pray, if we turn from our wicked ways, which means if we admit our mistakes, and if we turn away from those things, that you would heal our land. And so, God, I pray right now, I humble myself. Lord, if I've ever been wrong in any of this, Lord, I just pray that I would humble myself right now before you. And Lord, I say, I'm sorry, I turned from my ways. If there's anything that I've done, Lord, I just pray right now that you would heal our land, that you would heal our people, and that you would unify us, God. Please come, Jesus. Please come. And we love you, Lord. We know you can do it. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Really powerful. Really powerful. So, you know, what we're talking about today, the topic of today is something we're actually hoping for, that something that we hope this nation walks out of with, today we're talking about testimonies. And so we're hoping that when things begin to change, that families and all of the Black lives in this country can walk away with a powerful testimony of change. And so that's what we're talking about today, testimonies. And so, you know, simply we can start this discussion off right today by just simply asking the question, what is a testimony? And I actually, I looked up a formal definition of it, and it's the all-powerful Google said a testimony is a spoken or written statement, or it's a recounting of a spiritual experience. We can see on TV, or if you've ever been a part of a court case, a testimony can be, a witness's statement about what they saw happen, or a criminal act happen. But for us, it's a recounting. It's a spoken or written statement about what happened between you and the Lord. Something that you went through, and that a situation or a test or a trial that you went through, and where God showed up, or where God was with you the whole time. That's what a testimony is, and that's what we're talking about today. And so I feel like one of the best ways that we can explain what a testimony is, and how we can elaborate on that today, is just by simply sharing my testimony, and then also Pastor Adam is going to share his testimony today. And so we're going to keep it brief, because I know I could go on for hours and days, and that's a good thing, because it's amazing that I can share all the ways that God has shown up, or has been there through all the crazy things that I've been through. And so I could go on for days, but today we're just going to keep it super brief. But Pastor Adam, will you kick us off with that?
Yes, for sure. So like Pastor Dakota said, I could go on for a long time about all the ways that God has come through and rescued me. And anyways, I'll try to keep it brief. So I grew up in church my whole life. I don't ever remember a time that I really didn't go to church as a kid. And so I can actually remember, when Pastor Dakota brought up this topic, this is the first time I thought about it in a while, but I remember the first time I actually said, ask God to come into my heart. And I remember it was I was 10 years old, or 9 years old, or 8 years old, or something. I don't remember. Sometime around there. And I remember we had been at church, and I was laying in my bed, and it was one of those, we went to a church that was hellfire and brimstone, type sermon. And so I didn't do anything at church that day, but I was laying in my bed, and all I could think of was the flames. Pastor was talking about, I was crying. I went and got 8 glasses of water. And it's Dad, will you please pray that I will not go to this terrible place? That was the first time that I asked Jesus into my heart. Well, that prayer didn't really stick as I got older, because and for me, it's because I think I grew up with a lot of that. Instead of knowing who God is, like the goodness side of him. Instead, I just saw the punishment side and like all the like, oh, I'm going to go to hell if I don't do this. I'm going to go to hell if I don't do this. And for me, that didn't really stick until I found out who God really was, that he's actually looking out for me, that he loves me, that he died for me. Like I knew that he died for me, but in the way that he died for me, until that all really clicked, like I didn't follow him the way that I should have. Like my 9th through 12th grade years, I was like in this battle between like being like living for God and not living for God, and living for God and not living for God, and living for God with my youth friends, and then not living for God when I was without them. And so I lived this almost double life. I was almost as like a double agent, you know, and
It's not as cool at all.
yeah, but not near as cool because I wasn't like, you know, taking down bad guys. So, or sneaking around Russia, you know, shaken, not stirred like James Bond. I was not that. So I remember I went to camp. I think it was my 10th grade, maybe 11th grade year. I can't remember what year it was that I went to camp, but it was in the, I want to say that that's really the time that I gave my heart to the Lord, because in that camp, I really learned who God was. And that's one reason I'm so sad that we're not having camp this year, is because camp literally changed my life and
Right.
like made me, I want to say really, you know, helped make me into who I am.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was in that time at camp, 10th or 11th grade year, that I really found out who God was, and I started following him. And there were still times where I like screwed up, like, and really messed up and dropped the ball. But I would say that that's the time that I realized who God was, and I said, like, I'm going to follow him, you know, the rest of my life. And so I kind of did that there. I also found out that I was felt like I was called to be in ministry that same week of camp. You know, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. Shout out Holy Spirit. Pentecost Sunday was this last Sunday. So, you know, so I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. All that stuff like happened to me. You know, Pastor John talked about at fall retreat. I remember he talked about like he had this stuff, you know, with his dad, this anger and hurt, you know, I believe. He was talking about that at fall retreat and how that fell off of him. Well, I had a lot of anger and resentment toward my dad as well. And that kind of helped fall off at camp that week as well. Like when I say that week of camp changed my life forever, like it did so much for me. Because at that time, we were going through a lot with our parents. My dad later on was diagnosed with MS, and so we think this is where a lot of his like stuff was going on, because it's like a brain illness, not just like your walking stuff. It has a lot to do with your brain. At that moment, like he was like almost like a loving dad our whole life, but when we hit 9th grade, all of a sudden like something happened in his brain, and like he just started like yelling at us and cussing at us all the time. And so we spent a lot of time not trying to come home,
Right.
because it was just he was either attacking us or he's attacking our mom, and like we just don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And so God really helped me through a lot of that pain, you know, through that camp, but also through my youth group. That's one reason I wanted to be a youth pastor as well. Not only did I felt called to it, but when we found our youth group, like they were like a home for us. And when all literal hell was breaking loose at my house, I knew that I had my youth group friends and my youth group just period in my church on Sundays and Wednesdays. And really they'd let me hang out all week long. I would come as soon as school would let out at like 3 and just shoot. They would just let me shoot basketball for hours inside the building.
Right.
And it helped me because I had a safe place, you know, and that the church was a safe place for me. And so all that happened, you know, God kind of reconciled a lot of that stuff later on. Man. And then I remember when I was 21, I had been dating a girl for 4 years, and we got engaged, and then she broke up with me. So man, all these stories are like jumbled up in my head. But anyways, I went to Lee University from 18 to 20. And at 20, I was doing a terrible job. I'd kind of fallen into some of the ways that I was doing before I was a Christian, because I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I had the wrong people surrounding me. And so basically I failed out of Lee because I was like partying and only playing like sports and stuff. Like that's all I did. I didn't care about the schooling. And I basically failed out. And when I failed out, I asked this girl to marry me, which is what you do when you fail, apparently. So I asked her to marry me, and then I lost my driver's license, and then she broke up with me around the same time.
So you're saying your life just fell apart all in a short
Oh,
amount
it
of time.
fell completely apart. And then for like, I don't know, a handful of months, I don't even remember the length of time. It was way too long. I completely was like, I'm not going to try to go to, this is the only time in my life I remember not, like I would go to church maybe to hang out or to play guitar or play basketball. I don't know. But I basically didn't go to church. I just tried to drink and try to solve all my problems that way.
Yeah.
And then I remember that a Sunday morning I came back and it was like everything clicked, and God was like, "Hey man, look, I've been here all along. I know you've been screwing up. It's okay. I love you. Like come back to me." And yeah, pretty much from that point forward. And like he reminded me of my calling and reminded me, you know, of what I should be doing with my life, because at the time I was doing nothing with my life. And so yeah, anyways, it was like in a moment in an altar, like God reminded me of all that stuff. He told me to finish what I started. So basically go back to Lee. And yeah, so I did that. I had to go to a community college for a semester to prove to my parents that I wasn't going to like flunk out again and that I could handle school. And so I made straight A's, went back to Lee, made pretty much straight A's with a couple B's. And yeah, I actually went from flunking out to being named like who's who among college students. And like, I don't know, my second time at Lee was a lot different than my first time, maybe because I had my priorities straight. And I also met Kara that time. I met my real true love, you know what I'm saying? And so everything turned around from there. There's so many other stories, you know, that I could tell about like God providing with like money and jobs, but that's my basic testimony. And I know that wasn't short, but I tried.
It's all right. Well, that's awesome. It's really awesome. Really, and you know, I've heard a lot of your testimony in further detail, and so I know there's a lot more, and it's all super powerful. So, but that's awesome. But you know, just to try and share a brief part of mine. I don't know if I can do it either, but
Dude, it's tough.
Yeah. a lot of my testimony has to do with family. You know, from the time I was born, my biological dad was not in the picture. You know, when I was 3 or so, my mom remarried, and the longer their relationship went on, like the harder it got for me. My stepfather kind of eventually it was just kind of like emotionally abusive, you know, never really physical abusive, just mainly emotional. And it really instilled a lot of like insecurities and just made me really timid and shy. And like, I lacked a lot of confidence, and it was just weird. Like I was just really afraid to like offend people all the time. And so then going into like, 5th grade, my mom and stepdad divorced, and then her and I like moved to Columbus from like Harris County, which like when you're in 4th grade, that's a huge move. You know, it's like all new schools, all new friends. You know, might as well move to a different country. You know, but then you know my mom kind of her priorities kind of changed, I guess. Like life really became about like kind of her and satisfying her like needs or wants. And she began to party a lot, and actually like took me to a lot of those parties. And like I spent a lot of time at bars in my 5th grade year and like 6th grade year.
Nice.
Like doing homework at bars and stuff. And it's pretty interesting. But eventually, like, after a crazy situation, like my mom, I was at church one evening, my mom got drunk and like demanded I come home and blah, blah, blah. And I came home and she showed up a couple hours later, and this huge, like, kind of fight. And, you know, none of it made sense because she had been drinking, you know, and at one point, like, it was kind of weird. I just felt this, like, kind of moving in my heart and my mind. It was just like the Lord saying, like, hey, it's okay to leave, you know, it's okay to take some time and you know, separate yourself from this situation. And my family, people like my grandparents had always told me, like, hey, you know, you don't have to stay there. Like, if it's hard for you, if it's hard to, like, manage, like, you don't have to stay. Like, you can come live with us, you can go live with your aunt and uncle, whatever. And I never felt peace about it. And so I felt the Lord give me peace in that time. And so I said to my mom, I was like, hey, like, I'm just going to leave for a couple of days, maybe even a week or two, but I'll be back, you know? So then I left that night, and it was, you know, it was ugly, whatever. I came back a couple of days later, and, like, all my stuff had been, like, put outside. And so it was, like, in this, like, carport area, whatever. And then I kind of knew, like, this is going to be longer than 2 weeks. And so, you know, so 8 years later, I'm still at my aunt and uncle's house. And so, but, you know, a year ago, like, I moved out, and I'm married now and live with my wife, you know. But so all of that, like, kind of led to a lot of, like, feelings of rejection, you know, and still dealt with a lot of insecurity, and kind of the instability, like, just led to a lot of complications, like, just really frustrated a lot too, you know, like you were saying, dealt with a lot of anger, like, just kind of dealt with all these things. And it wasn't until I was, like, in college where I started to allow the Lord to, like, really deal with a lot of those things. And, you know, part of my process was, like, first identifying it, like, saying, like, okay, like, because I got really good at, like, just ignoring it and, like, oh, this was just my life and that's just what it is. And, like, you know, all these negative things, these negative emotions and feelings, like, those are from something else. Like, they're not from the situation. And finally I came to this point where I was like, maybe all this stuff is starting to catch up with me, you know? And so I started to, like, ask the Lord, like, how can he help me through this? And, like, blah, blah, blah. And he did, like, it seemed like whatever negative emotion was kind of, like, dominating, like, that season, like, he started dealing with them one at a time, you know? Like, if it was anger, if it was rejection, if it was, I don't know, like, loneliness, like, he started dealing with them one by one. And so that was really a powerful process. And you know, all that stuff kind of affected mine and Olivia's relationship. Her and I dated for almost 4 years. And the whole time, like, I was still dealing with a lot of that stuff. And so her and I actually, like, we 2 summers ago, we ended up, like, separating. And, like, it was really confusing, like, for both of us. And, like, it was confusing for everybody at North Highland. Everybody's like, what the heck, you know? But, like, there were some things that I was still dealing with that were fruits of, like, my childhood and all that, like, that I still hadn't dealt with, and I needed to deal with, just, like, between me and the Lord, you know? Because, like you were saying, like, anytime I was feeling a lot of those things, like, I would look towards other things or other people. And I used to, like, mine and Olivia's relationship as, like, a comforter or a distraction from those feelings. And the Lord led me into a season where it was just him and I, you know? And so, and it led to a lot of success, because, like, Olivia and I are married now. So, super awesome. But, you know, one thing I'll say, like, after going through a lot of those seasons and a lot of those, like, learning seasons, like, I realized that the Lord was with me the entire time. Like I can look back. There's not a season of my life, like in crazy situation in my life, where I can't look back and see like, okay, God was there the whole time, you know? And so, I'm super, super thankful for that. So, so yeah, that's a brief 30,000 view of my testimony. You know, one thing that I had a hard time with growing up, even once getting into college, like I started hearing people share their testimonies more and more. And like, I was a part of this like outreach ministry where it was like everybody who was a part of it were these like ex-convicts or ex like drug addicts. And so their testimonies were these like really powerful, like radically saved situations, you know. And I started doubting my testimony. I was like, mine's nothing compared to that, you know. And so I started asking this question that I'm going to ask you, and that is how do we develop a testimony? Like how do you know what is your testimony? You know what I'm saying? Like, so what are your thoughts on that?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
As far as like the crazy testimony side of things, you'd be like, as soon as one of those type of guys, like there was one dude that literally left a dude dead in a ditch. He was a youth pastor that came and like visited one time. He's actually a pastor. I think he's in either Minnesota. Yeah, I think he's in Minnesota. He was in Louisiana, but anyways, he was like a drug dealer and he left someone, slit his throat and left him for dead in a ditch.
Yikes.
And it was his third strike, so he should have been in prison for life. And then somehow got out, became a janitor at the church, was preaching as he was sweeping because he got saved in jail. And then they brought him on staff, and
Wow.
and it was a large church. It was like 3 or 4. It was about the size probably of North Highland, honestly. And yeah. Anyways, crazy testimony. But when you hear stuff like that, you're right. It's almost like you feel discouraged. You're like, I haven't gone through anything in my life, and I don't know if God's ever protected me. So, or brought me through. But really, the bottom line is we've talked about this kind of a lot during quarantine. Is that you have to find where the good is, and where you find where the good is usually where, this is going to sound cliche, but where the good is where God is. Like it is though. Very true. And so, so honestly, when you look back at your life, you probably don't see a lot of ways where God has protected you. But really just living out your life, and you look back at like just even small things like where God's came through, like that's really your testimony. Like you just have to ask him to like almost open your eyes to see the good. Because I think a lot of times like it's hard for us to see that. Even, I hear sometimes people, I have like friends that grew up in church, got saved when they're like a year and a half years old. Like their first words were, Jesus, come live in me, and they've never strayed away from God. And then when they hear testimonies, they're like, I don't see where God's ever, done that for me. But, sometimes guys are like, if you have a testimony like that, don't feel like you're less than, because really, if you look at that, you can see where God has protected you from like straying away throughout your whole life.
Right.
And I'm sure there's other ways that he's also helped you. But anyways, everybody's got a testimony. Everybody has a story. At the end of the day, a testimony is practically your story. It's not just like when God shows up in a crazy way, it's also your story. And so your story can help other people.
Right.
Anyways,
that's really good.
I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, I love your little cliche thing. I mean, it's true. Like he is the source of all things good, like genuine good things. And so like he is, like Jesus is the good news, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's really good. And, I was just going to add on, like, just ask the Lord, like, because, where I was like, okay, like, I basically felt like these damaged goods, like, all right, like, it's just me now, like, kind of jacked up after, events A through Z, like, what now? And, like, that's when I started asking God. And so I would just encourage students tonight to just begin to ask the Lord, like, okay, like, begin to like piece these puzzles together and show me like what was the purpose of it, and where were you, and talking to God, like what was the purpose of this, and like where were you during this, and how were you operating during this, and yeah, and so just ask the Lord for sure. So we're about to close this, and I just want to leave Real Life with three things tonight, and my three answers to this one question: what do we do with these testimonies? Right? We've asked the Lord to help us develop them. We now know what testimonies are. We ask Him to develop. What do we do with them now? Like, what is the next step? And I would say the first step is to record them. To take these testimonies, and as the Lord is developed them in your mind and your heart, reminding you all these things, and begin to record them, because it can be easy to forget them, or like it can be easy to forget certain details which are important. Like it's important to record and to remember like how God worked through every single detail of your life, and there's a specific detail that may be super relevant to one person and help them out a lot. And so you want to record them. You don't want to forget like what God's done for you, and how great of things He's done for you. Second thing is, I would say that the second thing to do is to respond to those testimonies. Every time that you are reminiscing or recounting like what God has done in your life, respond to them through worship. Thank the Lord for what He brought you through, and how He brought you through them, and like where He's brought you now, because He deserves that. He deserves that worship and that glorification through those things. And so record, respond, and then the third thing is share it with somebody. The whole point of testimonies is not just for you, it's for other people, and it's to open other people's eyes and share them, open other people's eyes and show them that God can work through any circumstance and any situation. So record, respond, and share it with other people. So Pastor Adam, is there anything else you want to add to that? Or
I love it. Share the message. That's what we say on Sundays during North Highland service. But seriously, share your testimony. Your story can help somebody else, because you don't know like what they're going through. It could connect, like what you've been through in your life can connect with someone else and make all the difference in the world. There's been times from the stage that I've shared my testimony in the middle of a sermon when I wasn't even part of it, just because I felt like I needed to. And then someone will come up to me after and be like, like that touched me. Like that's where I am right now. Or maybe I'm in Walmart or something, and I've went up to people and like talked to them, and then find out, they went through kind of the same stuff. So, and even just with friends as well, just in a casual way, it's, your story is powerful, whether you believe that or not right now. I promise you that even in the little thing, like your story is powerful. So make sure that you're sharing it. So
there's no like scale of significance to insignificance. Like it's all, like any move of God is like powerful,
Yeah, that's good.
So that's awesome. Well, I've enjoyed this topic today, and I believe we're going to transition into a time of worship. And so, Pastor Adam, will you pray us out and close this time?
Yeah. So Lord, I just pray right now that you would be with us right now in this time of worship. Lord, I just pray for any needs that our students have, or maybe parents that are watching as well, Lord. I just pray that you would meet those needs, that you would be with your people today, God, and that you would show up in this time of worship in just a second. We love you, Jesus, in your name. Amen.
Amen.
most beautiful. And one thing I desire, only this I seek, just to dwell, dwell, dwell here forever. This will be my posture, just laying at your feet, just to dwell, dwell, dwell here forever. Dearest Father, closest friend, most beautiful, most beautiful. Dearest Father, closest friend, most beautiful, most beautiful. One thing I desire, only this I seek, just to dwell, dwell, dwell here forever. This will be my posture, just laying at your feet, just to dwell, dwell, dwell here forever. Dearest Father, closest friend, most beautiful, most beautiful. Dearest Father, closest friend, most beautiful, most beautiful. You're most beautiful. There are no words, there's nothing left. Our love sings to you. Whoa, there are no words, there's nothing left, 'cause our love sings to you. And whoa, there are no words, there's nothing left, 'cause our love sings to you. And whoa, there are no words, there's nothing left, 'cause our love sings to you. And whoa, I'm so in love with you, 'cause you're beautiful, you're so beautiful. And I'll fix my eyes on you, 'cause you're beautiful, you're so beautiful. And I'm so in love with you, 'cause you're beautiful, you're so beautiful. And I'll fix my eyes on you, 'cause you're beautiful, so beautiful. With just one look, everything changes. closest friend, most beautiful, most beautiful.
All right, well, Real Life, thank you so much for joining us today. We loved hanging out with you during this service time, but we are going to continue hanging out in Zoom, so don't miss that out. We've had some really fun experiences over the last 2 months on Zoom, so you don't want to miss out on that. But I'm just going to pray over us all and we'll get out of here. So, Lord, thank you so much for Real Life and this family, God. We just thank you for all the different people, all the different backgrounds, all the different testimonies. God, thank you so much for working through all of them, Lord. God, I pray that you begin to speak to students, begin to speak to their hearts, and then speak through them to other people, God. Begin to help lead them to change the world or to change different people's lives, God. We just thank you for that. Lord, we love you. God, I just pray a special blessing over every single person. God, we love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Well, wasn't that such an awesome service? We love you guys so much. We hope that you learned something new tonight. Hope that you got something from God, something that you needed to hear. We love you so much. We cannot stress that enough. And we hope that you have a wonderful Wednesday night. And join us on Zoom right after this. Okay, and bye.